All right, here we go on this Monday. Yep, we are ready to roll. Folks, just getting underway here. As always, we like to make sure we check all of our connections, but I think we should be good to go. As you know, for this hour, we're live on X. We are live. Let me check the volume here. Make sure we check. And it's good. Yep. I think we should be good to go. And also, we are live on YouTube, and then we're also live on Facebook. How about the terrible story out of North Carolina? My God. Oh, just brutal. Yep. Now, let me see. We're going to be talking to Justin Katz, managing editor, anchorrising.com, our segment. Gian says the audio is good. Gian, how about the improved audio quality this morning? Wow. Holy cow. What a difference. And we're live. But also, we're going to, this story out of Cranston with the janitor is terrible. And I know, it is, Gian, good. I know, I like that. It's great, dude. Now, we may have a special guest tonight, but I don't know yet. We're still working on it. So tonight, we'll either be out on Road Patrol Live, or we may have a special guest, so then we'd be live. So, but either way, we'll figure it out. But the situation with the Cranston janitor is really horrific. It just is. All right, we're going to be starting in just a couple moments, folks. Oh, we don't need to hear that again. No, we don't. Yes. Okay, we're going to start in just 5 minutes, and then we will have our friend Justin Katz. Hi there, Bruce. Good afternoon. Yes. There's Jane Rice. Good afternoon, one and all. Yes. Hi there, Texas. There's Brenda. Folks, here we go, bringing everyone together on this Monday. It's cloudy out, but it's not rainy. It's supposed to be a little bit of a dry week. There's Janet Dwyer, who's so brilliant she is. Let's see. And we'll talk to Justin. I want to remind you, though, check out DePietro.com, where we do have the latest. And also, he had previous drug convictions. And so, I know someone said, oh, give Guy a break. He deserves the job. Or who cares? I forget, it was one of those types of things. Whereas clearly the parents in the school care about something like that. And I don't blame them that they care about something like that. So check it out. We're the only ones, I'm pretty sure, that have it. As you know, folks, there it is. It's on DePietro.com. There's Andrea Lemire is here always. About it. There's Joe Rowe. Joe, I was trying to message you on that. Roofco, Joe Rowe. Joe is asking me about what roof company, and then I was trying to message him, and it would not go through. Roofco, Joe Rowe. I don't know why it wouldn't go through. But that's the plan. Oh, I don't know why that is. Okay. Not sure about that. But we have it about the janitor in Cranston. Oh, my goodness. Where do you see that? Yep. Anthony DeSimone. And I understand. We're the only ones that have it. And there was someone that posted, oh, who cares that he had passed. Oh, there's Bruce. Yes. Who cares that he's had a post? Nope, that's not the one I'm looking for. Past drug conviction. Well, I'll bet the parents that send kids to the school care about the fact. And I don't know if I'd use I'm not so sure it's past tense. It sure seems like it was present tense. He OD'd with fentanyl at the Garden City School in Cranston last week. There's Cheryl. Oh, good. I didn't know that. Hi there. Oh, good. Joe got it. Roofco. And let me know how you make out. Yep. Who would believe that he has some kind of a substance abuse problem? I also, yes, look at that, 30 years. You know what I want to mention is I'm not saying he can never work again, but again, check depetro.com. I see some people leap to different, oh, so you're saying the guy can never, I didn't say he can't work again. I just question perhaps, maybe he should not be working in a school. I don't think that's extraordinary. Oh, oh, good. Okay, and we're going to begin. Folks, good afternoon. At 106, I'm going to, we'll just remove him just for a moment. It is Monday, and it's not raining. It's a big week here on the program. But I want to remind you, folks, this push for our program as we kick things off, another full week here in September. Fall is in the air. I'll tell you who's ready. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Homegrown mums and kale are outstanding. Their sizes range 4-inch, 12-inch pots, ornamental peppers, 4-inch, 6-inch pots. I was there yesterday. What a display they have, and everything you need for all your fall decorations. Wait do you see the pumpkins they have and straw bales? I saw Junior, who looks great. Corn stalks, gourds, Indian corn. This is a family-run business. They grind it. They're open 7 days a week. Native vegetables, local honey, maple syrup is available. Remember, fall is the ideal time for planting. With all that rain we had over the course of the weekend, obviously, you can already notice actually a difference even in the grass. So trees, shrubs, perennials, they have it all. They're open 7 days a week. Stop in and see them. They are valued sponsors here on the program. They are valued. It is PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. And I share their Facebook page. Just sometimes I feel if people have a way that they can identify and then they say, oh, okay, that's who that is. Look for them. But again, for all your fall decorations, and they have great pumpkins, PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. And again, they also have delicious vegetables. Well, as I was mentioning, we have the story regarding the story, more details, I should say, regarding the Cranston janitor. And it's on depetro.com. And listen, I put the police report. There is a problem in Rhode Island where, because of all the progressives and the Democrats, they want to remove and everything gets expunged. And that was someone that people were saying, no, he had a drug problem in the past. Well, on Thursday, he OD'd at the Garden City School. And then we have the video up. It's all on depetro.com, brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember, they're open 7 days a week, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge, something. There's always something on the menu for everyone, a great meal. You know what else I wanted to mention? A friend of mine that I met up with, again, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick, said, now, is this place, like, do you stay overnight and eat? Or I'm saying, no, it's called the Coesit Inn, but it's actually, it's not an inn like that you'd stay, or like a hotel motel. No, it's a restaurant. And coming soon now, the coffee. Yes, the coffee they're going to have in the market at Coesit, the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue in West Warwick. All right, we're going to start with Justin Katz, managing editor. Oh, remove that. AnchorRising.com, our segment, Politics This Week. After we talk to Justin, I am going to give you the latest on this janitor. And we're working on later. I will have an update on Kylie. Now, Wednesday is the next court session for the boyfriend, Greg Groom, but he won't be there. But this is going to be several. But people do ask me, and we do have some updates on it. And folks, this portion of the program brought to you by Propane Plus. Remember, call Propane Plus today, residential or commercial heating or cooling, and always online for you at propaneplus.com. Well, folks, it's Monday. Let's bring him on. It's time for our segment, Politics This Week. And joining us, he is the managing editor of anchorrising.com. It is Justin Katz. I want to start off. This is a story also that I'm so glad that we get a chance to talk about things and have our segment, because I just feel many times the rest of the media, they skim over things. And I want to take credit for this. And that is back in January, I'll even say I was the only one that I'm familiar with. I mean, other than us talking about it. But I think the local media, because of their dislike for the Trump administration, but I was pretty vocal that I thought it was a mistake then that Governor McKee in January blew off the inauguration. And here it is, September. And I, several times, and even wrote about it and said, it's a mistake. You go, he should have networked himself, show some genuine respect. It's the proper thing to do. As you and I have talked about, Governor McKee, you're the governor of the state. You're supposed to represent everyone. This is a new president in office. We have no Republican in the Senate. We have no Republican in Congress. He had an obligation to go there and represent the people and do the right thing and just be cordial and be polite and be professional. Congratulations, Mr. President. Be along with all the other governors. And now, fast forward, it's September, and now he's saying he's demanding, right? He wants a one-on-one meeting with President Trump because of, the debacle with offshore wind. So I want to start off and get some of your thoughts on that.
Well, I agree completely. And one of the things that you see with the Trump derangement syndrome, with all of the Democrats so forcefully against him, is it'd be so easy for, say, Rhode Island Democrats in Congress, McKee, to be a little softer. And that would be about all it would take. I mean, when McKee talks about how he doesn't think the Trump administration understands the revolution wind is 80% done. We're almost done. But that's not the point. The point is, well, Trump appears to be against the wind energy for a number of reasons, but there are other things that he wants leverage on. Immigration, he wants to get some reduce the sanctuary city thing, election transparency, reducing mail ballot fraud and gerrymandering. These are areas where McKee could start to give just a little bit, and that would really stand out among Democrats. But instead, as you say, he wouldn't go to the inauguration. It's constant attacks, constant lawsuits. Of course, we're going to get nothing. And that's, as you and I have been discussing, that's a very, very bad situation for a state to be in when an entire economic model is relying on handouts from the federal government. We can't be this one-party attack dog state in a country where sometimes the other party is going to be in Washington.
That is exactly right. And Justin, the other thing I also talked about, again, going back to January of this year, with that not only the day after the inauguration, there was a huge announcement and a big project being planned. And it was a $500 million investment in the United States. And the person that was at the press conference was Larry Ellison, of Oracle, who has a home in Newport. And again, I stressed at the time, that would have been an opportunity for Governor McKee, had he done the responsible adult thing and attended the inauguration, representing all of us, could have gone up and said, hey, Larry, you're a Newport resident. I'm the governor of Rhode Island. Great to finally meet you. We'd love to talk to you about doing something in the state. Again, Justin, do you notice there's a pattern to me that the local media lets them off the hook on? And that is, everything is always reactionary. They're always reactionary. There doesn't seem to me to be an adult in the room that says, let's go and just be diplomatic and show our face and be cordial.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think of, say, a business where the owner of the business, the CEO, has to get that business going, has to make connections, network, get customers, get suppliers. They don't worry about politics. They don't worry about identity politics. They worry about being friendly with everybody who could possibly be involved with their business. You don't get that in Rhode Island. I think partly because it's so partisan, but also I think mostly because it's so intrinsically corrupt, where everything in a state, as we've talked about, say with labor unions and private sector businesses, everything is about how can I get my cut? And if that's your mentality, not the good of the state, you're not worrying about, oh, maybe I should go just be friendly with this billionaire resident, because why not? He's an important person and I'm the governor. It becomes, I don't know how to get something out of you, so you don't matter to me until I can figure that out. And that's really what we're down to, is the dregs of bad management in Rhode Island. And I think these cases show it.
And it's also, to me, Justin, it's also to almost like basic civility. Definitely animosity towards the private sector. Maybe he does view him that way. To me, that's an ideal situation to bump into the guy. They're both at the inauguration. You're the governor of the state. It's not as if he has a company and he's leaving the way we watched McKee scurrying to go after Hasbro. But it's just that type of chance meeting, and he could turn to one of his people and say, set up the meeting, even just out of, being polite, being diplomatic. And again, you're talking about someone that was the next day making an announcement, Larry Ellison, of a $500 million investment. It would be nothing for him to say, you know what, let's have the meeting and like throw him some crumbs. But hey, 25 million would be huge for Newport or something like that. Jumping off on that, when they had the Wynn press conference, Michael Sabatoni, the son, he gets up. And what does he say? Language that can't be played on television, language that can't be played on the radio. This is BS and blah, blah, blah. To me, Justin, a perfect example of lack of leadership, no backbone, was Seth Magaziner this past week, echoes Sabatoni saying the offshore wind in the White House, this is BS. Justin, I don't know how these people think that that's going to work with this administration, that type of talk.
Well, it's not. And, they're not even, as we were just discussing, they're not even concerned about anything working with this administration. They're concerned about playing for their real constituencies, or the labor unions in Rhode Island. And those are the people they're really trying to impress. And I think it shows through with the swearing and the repeating of the talking points. And in this case, it makes me, in some ways, it shows you how well some of the higher echelons of the Trump administration do in these situations. At one point, Magaziner said something about there's no vetting needed for this project. It was all done during the Biden administration. Well, the Biden administration didn't even vet the consciousness of the president. There's no, right. I mean, and that's something that I think of J.D. Vance or Trump or Pam Bondi would have thought to say. That is not a statement of credibility. We have to go back through. For all we know, the whole thing was approved on auto pen. We need to look through this, Mr. Magaziner. That's the kind of thing he invited. But instead it was just just grandstanding. Is too much of what we see in Washington, and frankly, why I think a lot of people just completely stop paying attention to all of these sorts of hearings, because all it is them putting on a performance for the cameras for their constituencies.
Yeah, and on top of that, to me, Governor McKee announcing he's going to try to get a White House meeting with President Trump and saying, I don't think he realizes how far along the project. To me, what should be leading the news cycle is basically the white flag of surrender from our Washington delegation. There should be nonstop pressure, to me, my opinion, of Sheldon Whitehouse. How come you can't get a meeting? Where is our Washington representation, Justin? How come Gabe Amo should have pressure on him? How come you can't get a meeting? What is the point of having representation in Washington that when something like this happens, you don't have anyone? Suddenly it's just left to McKee, who, as we know, he has no charisma. He didn't even know enough to go to the inauguration. He doesn't know how to ingratiate himself. He's not even comfortable with different people around the state outside of Cumberland. He is, to me, one of the more, if not the most parochial governor we've ever had. But again, I believe, this is my thought, the local media doesn't push these individuals, whether it's White House, Magaziner, Amo, or McKee, to me, final note on this topic, but they don't push someone like McKee or those individuals on the Trump administration because I believe our local media shares the same view on the Trump administration as both the governor and the Washington delegation.
No, absolutely, and that's why they don't ask, because the answer is obvious. Why can't you get a meeting? It's because you're attack dogs, right? You're not willing to compromise on anything. You're not willing to say, listen, Mr. President, this is important to our state. Is there anything we can do? And he'd probably say, oh, Mr. McKee, if you gave me a little bit of cover on the sanctuary state thing, I might be a little bit more kindly intended toward you. They can't do that because they know the answer. They know they're not running the state as you would if you actually cared about the state. They're running it as if you care about an ideology, the far left ideology of the modern Democrats.
Yep. Yeah. Now, Justin, also, this didn't really get a lot of coverage, but I think it's notable that last week, Speaker Shekarchi, Joe Shekarchi, he met with Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey. It was just the two of them, wasn't the governor. I don't recall ever seeing anything like that. I certainly don't recall Nick Mattiello ever meeting with, whether it was Governor Baker or, well, he was out by then. But what do you make of the fact that McKee's not even in the mix? Now you have the Speaker of the House going and meeting with the governor of Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, more than anything they might have talked about, discussed, is the photo that the speaker tweets out. It looks like two governors talking about the problems of the states. And that means one of two or maybe both things. One might be Shekarchi wanting that symbolism out there to start to test the waters, give the long-term impression he's got a lot of runway to the next election, start to get himself looking like an executive member of the state government. The other possibility, which could go right along with that, is he's realizing that our actual executive leader, McKee, is just not getting anything done. Now, I don't agree with what any of these people involved in that kind of a meeting want to get done, but it can't help us that our governor is such a short stick that legislators start to be able to go around him and one-up it because he's such a non-entity in the party and in the region.
I think he is, Justin. And I also have said, I just don't think this is a moment in time between the way the Trump administration, they're really going after crime, and the Republicans, the thing about crime, which is such a good issue for the Republicans, is it's a problem all over the country. It's not just, and it's young, old. I mean, it affects all different types of people. That's why, whether it's the National Guard or cracking down on crime in some of the different cities, I think it's a very effective issue because, as you and I have talked about, the progressives and the Dems, that's the first thing they're willing to give up is quality of life. But what do you also make of Governor McKee putting out, look at the student absences are way down in our schools. My thought on that is he has given up in wave the white flag of surrender in trying to rein in the teachers union. So now, even though the kids aren't really learning the way they should in the schools, his solution is the Band-Aid. Let's at least just try to get the kids to the school, even though because of the teachers unions, it's not the most effective form of learning.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing that makes it kind of tricky for us to analyze, but clever maybe on the Democrat side, is absenteeism is kind of a lead measure you would want to track. If you're looking at it like business strategy, one of those things you'd want to target because you can actually have some effect on it, realizing it's not what you really want, which is the kids learning and evidence of that. That would be worthwhile. But what you get in state government, especially in Rhode Island, is they do something that's almost inconsequential and parade it around like they've solved the problem. Like at best, you've started on the right path. I don't think they have, but that's the best you could say about it, especially when you look at the data. I mean, the decrease in absenteeism was actually less in this year than it was the year before. And if you look at a chart of the trends, it looks a lot like we're just still recovering from COVID and this was going to happen anyway. And so that's sort of the sweet spot for Rhode Island Democrats is let's find something that's going to happen, whatever we do, and then take credit for it. And I think that's a lot of what they're doing. And it just looks so silly, especially when you realize they've done advertisements. They've gone around and gotten all the people who have any name recognition in the state to make the little video clips to try to get absenteeism down. I don't think any of that's really having an effect. But if that's what you're targeting with all of that firepower, it shows really how weak they are. And they're weak, as you say, because they're not willing to target the real problem, which is the teachers unions. And the reason they're not willing to target them is because they're the ones actually running the state.
They are. And I don't know if people realize that. And also, I also noticed an absence of coverage. Corey DeAngelo is someone that I follow. He was at the White House. I mean, they've made great strides in going against the teachers union. He's even said, you know, he wants to put the teachers union out of business. I noticed again, Val Lawson, president of the Senate, head of NEA Rhode Island. There's no talk at the Rhode Island State House of enabling charter schools to expand. There's no talk about school choice. There is an uptick in Catholic school attendance. You don't hear anyone at the State House saying, you know, maybe we should make it easier for people to send their kids to private school or send their children to Catholic school or charter school or homeschooling. Nothing like that. They just fall in line. Before we get to Katz's Corner, Justin, also I noticed yesterday, Sportsbook Rhode Island experienced a server issue 3:30 on Sunday. The issue interrupted wagering for 75 minutes. It was not a planned maintenance. Justin, to me, now this is the opening weekend of the NFL. And to me, it just reeks of, like, this is just sheer incompetence. You don't hear about this with the professional sports books. I don't believe actually that the state should even be involved with this type of thing. But you just wonder, who is it that knew someone, you know, the I know a guy mentality where someone was given a job doing this. They're not even competent for it. On the opening weekend of the NFL, how do you have your sports book? Granted, I don't use it to bet. I don't bet. But how do you do that and then you're down for 75 minutes?
Well, what really strikes me about it is that it actually matters to anybody. I mean, if it were a private company, everybody would go, wow, that's a bad mistake. Oh, my goodness. Right. It would be chatter. But it more and more, especially in Rhode Island, we're basing big chunks of our budget on being able to legitimize these formerly illegal activities and take a cut for the government, which is the only reason we have gambling and casinos in Rhode Island at this point, in my view. That's what's really striking. And as you say, that engagement between formerly organized crime and the current government of the state starts to make you raise questions. Well, who's in what office that shouldn't be? Which niece of a labor union leader is in a job that forgot to do something simple that would keep this busy, or have any kind of duplication that would keep it busy during an important day for the organization? You don't get that because it's not a private organization fully. It's got the government backing, and it's not anybody's investment, and their investment is going to live and die by whether it works. It's just how government operates, and it's really a shame that we've kind of let things get to that level.
Now, folks, it's time for Katz's Corner. This is a story that Justin has found. What do you have for us this week, Justin?
Well, one thing that caught my eye was a representative of the National Coalition of Child Protection Reform, and they did a study of two measures: spending on child welfare, mainly foster homes and orphanage type investments from states, and how often they move children around, which is a sign of bad service. And he said Rhode Island's right at the top for very expensive and very bad service. And I thought, you know what, that's kind of a symbol of Rhode Island. That's kind of the point of their business model, is to flush money through from charitable organizations and the federal government, and then do things badly, so your problem never actually goes away and you can just make more money on it. And so we explored that a bit on Anchor Rising this week.
All right, folks, you can check it out at anchorrising.com. He is Justin Katz. Justin, excellent job as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, John.
All right, folks, there it is. Again, our segment, Politics This Week, right here on the John DePietro Show. This portion of our program. Now, remember, maybe if you're thinking of redoing your kitchen, or I want to remind everybody about Arch. Oh, hold on one moment. Arch Design Builders. So this is the perfect time. A lot of people say, I want to have some home improvement done, but I'm going to wait until after, the summer and so forth. But with Arch Design Builders, you're going to love dealing with my friends, Ed and Roxanne at Arch Design Builders. And again, it's all about setting up that free consultation at 401-218-9707, 401-218-9707 for Arch Design Builders. So maybe you've been thinking, it's very possible that you have been thinking of redoing your kitchen, or maybe redoing your bathroom, or they specialize in residential design. So give them a call, set up that free meeting with Ed and Roxanne, 401-207-4124, whether it's a kitchen or a bathroom or a basement or a deck, or maybe you have a special project in mind. Arch Design Builders. And again, this is high-end, custom build, family owned and operated, custom build and customer service, 5-star builder. Ed and Roxanne of Arch Design Builders. Call them 401-218-9707 for Arch Design Builders. Now, folks, I also want to just mention, obviously I enjoy speaking with Justin, and a lot of my, I did get a message from someone saying, boy, that's a lot of criticism about the Republican Party. Well, of Rhode Island. Not really. It's more, I view it as constructive criticism. I'm not trying to bash them. I would just argue that right now, so many issues that they could be responding to are in the news that would make news and would get people's attention. But I just don't hear it. Now, in regards to this individual, who is this individual? Anthony DeSimone. Do I know him? No. Do I have somebody, what do you have against him? I don't have anything against him. But if you log on to the website, depetro.com, he seems to have, and I know he does, he's got an extensive past record with drug convictions. And there's several things at play here. Number one, the state, as many people I think do realize, that Rhode Island is basically run and controlled by criminal defense attorneys. So as a result of that, there's a lot of laws that enable them. But to me, all you have to really do is log on, and you'll see, and you just, to me, it makes sense, and you wonder, who is it that decided that he would be a good fit to work in the Cranston schools? And I don't understand it. Of all the various people that they could get, I understand that maybe it's difficult. I don't know if it is difficult to find someone for janitorial work. I don't know if it's a problem, but why don't we start with, you can see it right on depetro.com, case summary, Anthony DeSimone. And, like, again, one of his friends, I imagine, contacted me saying, give the guy a break. And it was in the past. And I know that. But if you read the police report, he basically OD'd at school. And I think, I think it's a fair question and argument of, is that really, again, it is not about, to me, it's not about this individual. It's not. It's about who is deciding that someone of this nature is going to be in the school. If you read the arrest report, they catch him at the school. He's got the burned spoon. He's got the needles. He immediately tells the police, "Oh yeah, I'm a diabetic. What's the spoon for? Oh, that's for yogurt." And clearly the police aren't buying it. But I also do want to clarify, the school principal did send out an email and explained it. There was a parent that sent me an email and said, "This is the only email that we got," and that was not accurate. There was, in fact, another email that had gone out. But do you notice there's just this growing trend of the state? There's definitely a sense of lawlessness in the state, and it's not just Rhode Island. Obviously, you have ICE now conducting operations in Massachusetts. You know what else? I don't hear people effectively explain the challenges for I don't hear anyone explain it. I don't hear any of our elected officials. I don't hear anyone at the State House. I don't hear anyone explain one of the problems and challenges that police have when you run a sanctuary state. And I know it of, years dealing with police, a lot of people have false um, understanding or comprehension of what happens when someone who's not supposed to be here is in fact arrested and detained. And I can tell because some people, they have an unrealistic idea of how a lot of this stuff is treated. So the ICE actions going on right now in Massachusetts, they are real. But folks, I also want to remind you about Kids Club on the Pike. Kids Club on the Pike is terrific. And whether it is a birthday party or before and after school care, Kids Club on the Pike, easy to get to. They're right off of 295. And again, they're perfect for before and after school care, providing transportation for school-age children ages 5 through 12, or preschool, half and full day programs for preschool children 3 through 5. Kids Club on the Pike. You can call them at 401 443 5336. 443 5336. They're located right on the Cranston Johnston line on off of Plainfield Pike. It's Kids Club on the Pike. So maybe you're a parent or you're a grandparent and you're looking for some options for whether maybe it is for preschool or maybe it's for before or after school care. Kids Club on the Pike. Again, preschool, before and after school care. And by the way, they have a number of different locations, but contact them. You could feel safe with your children with Kids Club on the Pike. And they do a great job. And I love hearing from so many people that visit them, whether it's for a birthday party or for preschool care. Kids Club on the Pike. Now, something that I don't hear anyone mention, and I remember years ago, as I kind of got an education from the police, where they would say when they would arrest someone that was in the country illegally, they'd arrest them, they'd realize they're an illegal. And in Rhode Island, basically, unless it was for, like a gun charge or homicide or a very serious charge, they were basically just released. And let's just say, pick a name. Let's just, El Chapo. Let's just say someone goes by the name of El Chapo and they're arrested for shoplifting at the Providence Place Mall. So they arrest them, and Providence Police, because it's Rhode Island, they would then release them and say, this is your court date. You have to go to court on this date. And what happens? They never show up. A lot of people think, oh, then you call ICE. But under Rhode Island, because Rhode Island has an unfriendly relationship with ICE, they would not, our police departments, they don't even bother to call them because you have to go through so many hoops. So a lot of people think that ICE would just show up and grab them. They don't do it. But this is the crux of it to me. And I don't hear any Republicans at the State House explain this. You're not going to hear any of the Democrats, because the Rhode Island Democrat Party, much like the Massachusetts Democrat Party, and much like the Connecticut Democrat Party, the three states, Mass, Rhode Island, Connecticut, all with these failed policies. But what they don't explain to you is, and the way it was explained to me, is let's just come up with a fictional name. And I'm going to say, Joe Smith. So police arrest Joe Smith. And Joe Smith lives in Lincoln. And he has his address. And then they see that Joe Smith lives in Lincoln, was arrested again. I'll stick with shoplifting at Providence Place Mall. And so they release him. But there's a path of travel with him. There's a history of Joe Smith. So they know perhaps where he grew up. He grew up in Lincoln. Where did he go to school? Maybe he went to high school in Lincoln. Maybe then, whatever. He didn't go to college. But my point is, he grew up in Lincoln. He lives in Lincoln. Maybe, his parents live in Lincoln. He has a brother that lives in Lincoln. He has a pattern. And they know he has family and relatives that live in Lincoln. So if he goes on the run, the police at least know, okay, this guy has some family in the area and they have some documentation, some path of travel of where he has been and spent his life. Maybe they realize he lived for a time in Massachusetts. My point is, when you get some of these people that come in and then they get released for various things or they don't show up to court, who knows? Let's go back to, again, El Chapo. Well, maybe he goes to live in Massachusetts now. Maybe he goes to live in New York. Maybe he goes back to his home country and then comes back again. There's no way to track these individuals. There's no way to hold them accountable for the various crimes that they commit. And on top of that, something else that I just don't hear anyone talk about is you can't just go live in another country. You can't go somebody from another country can't just go live and say, from now on, I'm living in Mexico. They don't allow that. So, but in Rhode Island, especially the last 25 years is when it really started to tick up. And it had been building, but someone to me that put it to the next level was former congressman, former mayor, but David Cicilline. Because during the early 2000s, he got into office 2002 when CNC was forced out of office, and Cicilline was mayor for 8 years, 2002 to 2010, and then he became the congressman in the 1st District. But he really, to me, as someone that tracked it, he brought it to the next level, because in Providence, he had various people in different parts of the city that they were unhappy with the direction that he was taking the city. And he basically would say, go ahead, move out. I don't care if you live here, because I'm going to bring these new people in and they're never going to question. They're just going to go along with it. So it was really under Cicilline that things started to take off. I don't think it necessarily got any better or worse under Angel Tavares, who was he was mayor for 4 years, 2010 to 2014. Then he unsuccessfully ran for governor. If it had not been for Clay Pell, Tavares would have beaten Gina Raimondo in that primary, but he lost, and it paved the way for, in 2014, Mayor Jorge Elorza became the mayor of Providence and beat CNC, and Smiley pulled out and threw his support behind him. So then Elorza, for his 2 terms, he just absolutely brought it to the next level. That's when they started the direct flights from Guatemala. Word spread all through Guatemala that, Jorge Elorza, his parents were illegals. So technically he was an illegal, but that just put it to the next level. And then over the course of 2014 to 2022, that 8-year period is when the entire state just started embracing all these people coming in. And now Rhode Island has huge populations of Dominican Republic. That was really because of Cicilline. They had an office connected with the DR, the Dominican, and also Guatemala. So now Massachusetts, they have a little bit of a different path that they took, but they also, the past 20 years, especially the last 10 years, is when things just really went to the next level. And then, you watched under Biden as they would have the, quote, migrants flying in and putting them up in shelters. And so now, Massachusetts right now, ICE is having more an effect. And ICE is also coming into Rhode Island. And what I don't hear, I believe the elected Rhode Island Republicans, I think they should be much more vocal about this. I think they have a chance to change the landscape. There's a lot of people that agree with them. I think redistricting should be brought up. You know, the last time there was redistricting with Rhode Island, it was with Cicilline. And who did he redistrict with? His pal, who was House Speaker Gordon Fox. Now, Cicilline put Fox on the payroll at City Hall. Now, Gordon Fox ended up in federal prison. So, but the fact of the matter is, President Trump is right when he talks about whether it's Massachusetts or Rhode Island or even Connecticut or some of these other states, or this, they redistrict. Rhode Island could be redistricted. So you have, you know, there could be a Rhode Island Republican in Congress to represent us, because as I've said, right now, in my mind, much like Massachusetts, but just talking about Rhode Island for a minute, I mean, we don't have any representation. I think it should be a huge story that Governor McKee has no one in Washington leading the charge to try to even have a conversation at the White House. Do you understand? I'm not even saying that they would be successful, but just, for instance, what I'm trying to say is, I think it's unacceptable that someone like Senator Sheldon Whitehouse says, "Oh no, I'm not contacting them. No, I have no dealings with them." Well, then what are you there for? Right? Like, what do you have him for? He's like an empty fire extinguisher. What would be the point of having a fire extinguisher than when if you actually have a fire and it doesn't work? What's the point of that? So the whole reason to have, quote, representatives in Washington is for situations like this. And there's no one. There's no one. And then the state is stuck with the inept, incompetent McGreed that continues to just do his little media circuit of people that he's comfortable with. And he's going nowhere fast. And I also think that the local media, they give him a pass by letting him say, well, you know, if we have these windmills offshore, even though that, you know, they are going to destroy the fishing and they're going to kill whales, but because of that, we could have electricity at 10 cents a kilowatt. But what he leaves out of the equation is, but what's the real cost when they get millions in government subsidies? That's not a real cost. You know, as I've said, folks, if someone, this isn't a perfect analogy, but if you were at a gas station and he said, look at that, all my gas is 99 cents. And then you find out that that person is getting government money or state money. And then you went to him and said, well, how much would it be if you took away the government money and the state money? And then he said, oh, it would be $4.99 a gallon. Well, that's not an effective form of energy. So McKee, oh, it's 10 cents a kilowatt. Yeah, but with how many millions are we paying in order to get that at that? That's not the true cost. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Now remember, get your name on the list with Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. They could epoxy your garage or a patio or decorative concrete flooring, or maybe you want them to resurface a sport court, pickleball court, tennis court, basketball court. Call Corey today at 401-283-9815. 401-283-9815 for Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Free estimate. Get your garage epoxy, but get on the list now, because this is the season. Once the winter sets in, it's not the time of year to do something like this. Call them. Makes an incredible difference, and it's not that expensive. Call for a free estimate. Get your garage epoxy. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. 401-283-9815. Well, folks, good afternoon. Again, also, someone was asking me, now you saw that bad fire in Warwick, really bad fire. What would I do? Someone asked me, who's that company you recommend? Folks, now that's a disaster. If you saw that fire on West Shore Road, and we have the video up, that's a real disaster. Now, I don't know the owner, but if I did know the owner, I would have said, you got to call ServPro of Providence immediately. They deal with water damage, fire damage, smoke damage. ServPro of Providence, 941 5500. That was a disaster type fire. Right now, they're saying they still can't figure out how it started. But when disaster strikes, whatever their plans were on Saturday, Sunday, and today, their plans have been altered. Serve Pro or Providence, fast, thorough, professional. They're available 24/7. Call them. If you ever have a situation like that, when disaster strikes, Serve Pro or Providence, that's when they step in and they bring the latest technology, certified expertise, get your property back to normal fast. Serve Pro of Providence. Call them 401 941 5500. Well, folks, good afternoon. Again, now later tonight, I believe we're going to do Road Patrol Live, but it's very possible we're going to do an interview regarding the situation with Kaylee Montero, who lost her life to the goon boyfriend. People have been asking me, and we're going to do an update on it and bringing the latest on that. There's no real update, but there are some details that I think those of you that follow the story, I think would find interesting. So we'll know a little bit later as we get close to game time. But right now, I can't stress this enough that you're looking at certain parts of the country where their policies, because of their policies, they're thriving. When you had, I played the sound, Tom Holman of ICE, who's terrific, who again we've interviewed so many different times on the show. I've had him on more than any other local program. He's been on the John DePietro show. Tom Holman, director of ICE, the border czar. He's the former director of ICE. We've had him on more than 7 times. He's been on more than anyone. But what is remarkable about it is he comes right out and says that in places like Florida, Texas, they work. In Florida, law enforcement works with ICE. In our area, they have to apologize for working with ICE. Folks, we need these individuals removed out of here. This is just insanity of the direction that the state is going. And what I find somewhat disturbing is I don't see, there's a vacuum of leadership right now. And it is a time for someone to step up. Now, part of this is when you chase away a lot of the business leaders, some of the best people, some of the people have had the most impact in politics in the state. Let's just say in the last 25 years. Well, Governor Don Kachiri he came from the private sector and was a governor. We haven't seen anyone like that. Next year is going to be the 20-year anniversary that a Republican was elected either statewide or for one of our congressional seats. You had Cranston Mayor Steve Laffey. As we speak, Cranston Mayor Hopkins is the only elected Republican. And the people of Cranston like the way things are done in the city. The Democrat Party seems like a wreck. Warwick has an independent mayor, but the rest of them all fall in line. East Providence mayor, he's part of the McKee team. The mayor of Pawtucket, he's part of the McKee team. The mayor of Providence, he has cleaned up the city, but you can't deny that. Crime right now, Providence, they got rid of the ATVs. Providence police, they're allowed to do their thing. Providence police, the murder rate in Providence, make no mistake about it, the murder rate is an all-time low. But I just don't see anyone really speaking up to talk about how under Governor McKee, Rhode Island law enforcement is very limited how they can get involved. And if they can get involved, It's unfair. I know that whether it's Governor McKee or even the mayor of Providence, they'll say, well, we're not going to have our police, and the same thing in Massachusetts, by the way, and Connecticut. We're not going to have our police acting as immigration officers. Well, actually, you already have that. When you have the huge number of illegals that come in and people that don't follow the rules in lawlessness, as I've talked about, it sets up an era of lawlessness. So many of these people, they're not from here, so they don't respect our laws. Think of the difference of how if you have someone that buys a house and you see them out and cutting the grass and improving, trying to paint and clean up their home, and they're trying to clean up their investment. Think of the difference between that and a renter. And so many of the illegals that come crashing in here, they don't care about the state, because if things don't go the way they want, they just bail back to their own country. And so this era of lawlessness, it needs to come to an end. And on top of that, this is just such a pivotal time. I'm not trying to belittle or call out the Republican Party. And I also recognize that it's not easy always getting the media attention. I mean, I hear from a lot of the Republicans. Patricia Morgan used to say she didn't get the type of coverage that she wanted, that she should have gotten, that she deserved. I agree with that. But we kind of already know that so many of them, they are on board with the Democrat policies and in the way that President Trump has even talked about and treated, that if you're a Trump supporter in our area, whether it's Rhode Island, Mass, or Connecticut, you're treated like a secondary citizen. It's not your imagination. Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee, they care more about illegals than they do about a Rhode Island resident who happens to be a Trump supporter. They have no use for someone like that. None. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by J. Perry Paving. Call them today. High quality, fair pricing, exceptional service, free estimate, any project. J. Perry Paving. Call them 401-732-1730. And remember, they have a great package for veterans. So if you're a veteran, you know a veteran, J. Perry Paving, call them 401-732-1730, 401-732-1730, free estimate. It's J. Perry Paving. Well, folks, last week on social media, specifically on Facebook, the amount of outcry and the amount of people that were upset, and how dare you, and this poor guy, and the amount of anger, all because of that. All because I posted a photo that someone sent to me, and they were saying this guy should not be allowed to block the sidewalk. And the amount of people, and I don't accept it, the amount of people, that could be any one of you living on a public sidewalk. We're not talking about someone going through a tough time. We're not even talking about people that live in their car, people that stay with a relative. We're talking about someone that says, I'm going to live on the sidewalk. I'm going to live on a public sidewalk and an overpass. If you want evidence that the 401 has become a welfare state, you should look at some of the comments of people. How dare you? You're shaming that guy. He's the one that's set up on a public sidewalk and an overpass. I'm not saying that people can't have tough times. I'm not saying that. But there's a big difference between someone going through tough times and someone literally setting up on the sidewalk. Everybody help me. And the people, how dare you judge him? We're talking about a guy that sets up. People can't walk by. There's a heavy smell of urine. And all I did was post this photo. The amount of people that lost their mind. And the bulk of the people were saying people should be allowed to live on public sidewalks. All right. Later, we're going to do Road Patrol Live, where we have a special interview. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news.